Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 391, or episode 21 in the Do Not Be Hasty Reckoning. In this episode, we continue through Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Past. Hail, Greta.
Hail. Hail. Hail, John.
Hello.
What's up with I don't think I've ever been greeted in that manner before.
Well, that's my thing, is I strive for every time to greet you in some different way on these episodes. So yeah.
Gotcha. So today was the hail day, huh?
Kept it nice and simple, with a touch of the classic in there, So that was the mode.
Okay. I would say you did a good job.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Before we begin, we'd like to give a double up air five to our amazing fellowship. Stick 'em up, fellowship. 3, 2, 1. Whoopst.
Ooh,
Boom.
I think that was good.
Special thanks to this episode's executive producers, Caitlin of Tea with Tolkien, John R., KG, and Erendil Hope.
Yes, thank you.
Also, a shout out to those celebrating their fellowship anniversary in September of 2024. Alan C., Stephanie B., Dustin Q., and Robert S. Thank you so much for sticking with us over the years. All right. In this episode of Do Not Be Hasty, we continue through the Shadow of the Past as Frodo wrestles with the inevitable mission for which he has been chosen. This section begins with the words, Frodo drew the ring out of his pocket again and looked at it, and ends with, the enemy is moving. This section takes place on April 13th of the Third Age 3018 or Shire Reckoning 1418. We pick up in medias res from the last section as Gandalf encourages Frodo to cast the ring into the fire. All right, so Gandalf has just kind of challenged Frodo to throw the ring into the fire. And this is an effort by Gandalf to basically help Frodo understand the power of the ring. Gandalf, of course, knows that this will not have the desired effect. Mm-hmm. But he's also looking to illustrate a much greater point, which he does successfully. So we see that the ring is beautiful in appearance, and that Frodo intends to destroy it, but he can't. Right? He intends to destroy it, but he can't. So what do you make of that, Greta? Why is he unable to destroy this thing? And do you feel like you've ever been in a situation of a similar sort? Maybe not on the level of having this, extremely powerful ring at your disposal, but but maybe in some other way where you're like, yeah, I kind of have an intention of getting rid of this, but I just can't seem to bring myself to do it. Like maybe an old sweatshirt or something like that.
That's so funny.
Actually, I wasn't even thinking of that, and then it popped in my mind.
That's literally what popped into my brain when you mentioned it. It was my old college sweatshirt. I think, okay, well, your first question, why? So Frodo intends to destroy it, but he can't. Mm-hmm. So the will is there to throw it into the fire.
Yep.
But he can't even do that. I mean, we learned that the fire, it's like, even if he had been able to throw it into the fire, it wouldn't have destroyed it, right? I mean,
well, yeah, and we'll get to that, but he's not even
able to let it leave his hand.
Yeah, so it basically says he weighed the ring in his hand, hesitating and forcing himself to remember all that Gandalf had told him. And then with an effort of will, he made a movement as if to cast it away, but he found that he had put it back in his pocket. I mean, this is almost like other level of, because it says with an effort of will, he made a movement as if to cast it away. Yeah. But it's almost like mindless, like that he's not able to put it, to actually do it, right? It's almost like he's surprised to find that he put it back in his pocket.
Mm-hmm. It's like his mind and body are not communicating.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think obviously that's, can be kind of, that's just an attestament to the power of the ring, right? Just the evil that it, the way that it kind of wields its power over the possessor.
Yeah. It's a bizarre sort of phenomenon, and I don't know that I've ever had anything where it was like that level, where it's almost like you actually feel like you've worked your will up to do something, and you think you do it, but it's almost like something blocks between your conscious will and your ability, and it's like the exact opposite.
I feel like I've had that kind of experience, but only in dreams, where it's almost like that sleep paralysis thing, where you're you're willing your body to yell, or, in the dream, you're trying to yell but you can't, or
Mhm.
you're, you're trying to run away but you can't, so it does definitely have like a subconscious element to it.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of so the thing that popped into my mind right now is this passage from St. Paul's letter to the Romans. Um, I'll just pull this up here. I'm not even sure which translation this is. Let's see, King James. All right, so for the good that I would I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law then, when I would do good, evil is present with me. So anyway, it's that kind of line, that like paradox of like, for the good that I would I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Yeah,
It's just that conflict of the will.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very odd phenomenon, but this is just one of those details as I consider it closely, even like just now, beyond kind of the notes I took for this show, for this episode, like I'm surprised at that level of disconnect here, right? That it's like that Frodo is like, he almost thinks he works up the will, but it's almost like the ring almost like takes possession of his body in a way, right? Like mentally he feels like he has the will to do it, but the ring is almost like taken possession of him in a brief moment.
Yeah. Like almost made him like its puppet.
Yeah. Which maybe, I think that's worth pondering. I think that really speaks to the intense power of the ring, right? That this isn't just a, and I think we've wrestled with this some as we've gone through this journey, that this isn't simply a matter of, like, oh, I really like this thing and I just can't bring myself to part with it, right? Like this is not your old college sweatshirt, right? This is a thing that perhaps,
it's not like a sentimental thing,
can read your thoughts so well that it almost exerts a will of its. It almost has like this built-in defense mechanism, right, to keep you from like to even in like extreme circumstances, perhaps to like take over your body and prevent it from. And this is if in fact we remember this episode many years down the road when we get to chapter 3 of book 6, right? When Frodo attempts to cast, it comes to that crucial moment, right? It'll be interesting to consider like the details of that moment and the action like that the ring does to kind of like where like it's just interesting, like this like interplay between Frodo's will and the apparent will of this inanimate object, right? But that we I think have seen actually does have a will because Sauron put part of himself into it.
Right. Yep.
I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
No. I think that's spot on, right? And so the ring clearly has a will of its own. Yeah. Which makes sense because it was created by Sauron himself, right? Like you said, he put part of himself in it.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Of course, at this, it says Gandalf laughed grimly, right? You see, already you too, Frodo, cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it. And I could not make you except by force, which would break your mind. So yeah, it's interesting. Again, I'm not sure if Gandalf even understands, like, as I read that, like, that he understands what may have happened within Frodo in that moment. Anyway, it's an interesting little scene there. So let's read this passage concerning what it would take to destroy this ring. Greta, do you want to read the highlighted portion here?
Sure. But as for breaking the ring, force is useless. Even if you took it and struck it with a heavy sledgehammer, it would make no dent in it. It cannot be unmade by your hands or by mine. Your small fire, of course, would not melt even ordinary gold. This ring has already passed through it unscathed and even unheated. But there is no smith's forge in this shire that could change it at all. Not even the anvils and furnaces of the dwarves could do that. It has been said that dragon fire could melt and consume the rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on earth in which the old fire is hot enough. Nor was there ever any dragon, not even
Ancalagon.
Ancalagon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself.
Yeah. And we go on and learn, there's only really this one way, and that's in the fire that it was, that it was made with, right? In the cracks of doom in Orodruin in Mordor. So, let's kind of parse this, right? So, the fire, in the in Bag End would not be enough to melt any metal, really, and there's really not any Smith's Forge in the Shire that could melt this particular ring. Not even the anvils and furnaces of the dwarves, and it has been said that the dragon fire could melt and consume the rings of power, right? The various other, the 3, the 7, the 9. But there's not now a dragon left on Earth that could do that, apparently.
So that doesn't include the One Ring. Dragon fire could melt the One
because,
Ring, or
because
not?
that one was specifically cast in the fires of Mount Doom, which is this, supposedly, and what makes that fire special, you're just like, isn't it just a normal volcano, right? Well, I don't know if like volcano fire is like, hotter than other fire, but one would also imagine that it was something of Sauron's own craftsmanship, right? That makes it, leveraging that fire, that perhaps makes it hot enough, right? Or perhaps he adds something to the fire of Mount Doom that makes it hot enough. So yeah. Not even Ancalagon the Black. Now, Ancalagon the Black, just a little side note, this was the greatest of all dragons that was created by Morgoth, and who battled in the War of Wrath in the First Age. So, greatest dragon in the history of most powerful dragon in the history of Middle Earth, but he no longer is alive.
Is Smaug one of his descendants?
I don't think we know the exact descendant, like the family tree here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if dragons. Actually, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure if dragons have those kinds of family trees within Middle Earth. They seem to be like the creation of Morgoth, like the direct creation of Morgoth in most cases.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and I was just thinking of I'm blanking on the name, but the big spider, Shelob.
Shelob, right?
I mean, she has a family tree. Right?
She does. She's descended from Ungoliant. Yeah.
Yes, but isn't Ungoliant also a creation of?
No, Ungoliant was a Maya.
Oh, that's
a fallen Maya.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking here. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I had never thought about like family trees of dragons within. It's a similar question to, which is kind of a relevant question right now because this has happened in the Rings of Power, the TV show. In the Rings of Power, the TV show right now, we've got there's this scene, and I don't think it's in one of the episodes you saw yet.
Yeah. But
there's a scene where they show an orc, and then they show like the orc family. They show like the orc wife and the orc baby. Yeah. So we'll get to that. I don't want to deal in that a whole lot right now, or kind of like scoff or too much about it, or if I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I think about it. But my initial thought is, I don't think that's really where what Tolkien would have had in mind, like with orcs and like dragons. Like it's a relevant question to say like what kind of power was in them. But as I was thinking about it when it comes to like the dragons, like could it be that there are certain creatures that come to exist not as and they're not like originally created good, but they are like sort of phantom creations that are imbued with the will of some evil actor, right? So what I mean in this case would be like Morgoth is like kind of like Ale creates the dwarves, right? Mm-hmm. He creates them, and because he can't wait for the coming of the children of Iluvatar, he's so excited for them. And he creates them, but they don't have a will of their own, right? They're dependent on like his will to imbue them with animation, right? Like with any kind of a soul, right? Aule. And Aule is a finite creature, right? So so what that means is that Iluvatar has to graciously give the dwarves like their own like actual souls, right? So that they're not constantly dependent on Aule for their movement. And he does that. So could it be that with creatures like dragons and orcs, that they were given a will, right, from the very vast but finite will of Morgoth, and that's what imbued them with their power. And I think there's precedent to understand it that way within the Legendarium and like other writings about the Legendarium. But I don't know. It's an interesting sort of question. Do dragons, are they fallen creatures, or are they creatures that are dependent upon some fallen creature, and so they're kind of like phantoms in a way, right? Ultimately, anyway.
Yeah.
Getting metaphysical here, but it's an interesting question. I think.
Yeah, I was just curious to know more about who this black dragon was.
Ancalagon the Black. Oh, he was the greatest of all dragons.
Well, now I know.
I'll read it. I'll read this passage here from the last chapter of Quintus Silmarillion. Pull this up on the screen here.
So I have heard of this dragon before.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's not like a massive part of the Legendarium, but he's well known. But it says, but Eärendil came, shining with white flame, and about Vingalot were gathered all the great birds of heaven, and Thorondor was their captain. And there was battle in the air all the day and through a dark night of doubt. Before the rising of the sun, Eärendil slew Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest of the dragon host, and cast him from the sky. And he fell upon the towers of Thangorodrim, and they were broken in his ruin. So, there you go.
Okay. All right. That does sound vaguely familiar, actually.
Yeah, you've read it a few times.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not completely new.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very cool. But, I mean, the only reason, Gandalf mentions that dragon here because he was just making note that even that dragon, even the greatest of all dragons, would not have been capable of melting the ring.
That's right. That's right. Ultimately, it's only the fires of Mount Doom that are capable of doing that.
So he was making the point of...
But it is an interesting note that like Dragonfire probably would be able to destroy the rings of power, right? That was kind of an interesting note.
Just not the one ring.
Yes.
Yeah.
So next we get into this little kind of crisis that Frodo has, right? It can kind of be boiled down to like, why was I chosen for this? And it's really a mystery. There's certainly not for any unique merit on like the part of Frodo necessarily, at least not one that's like apparent to us. But it says you must use strength and heart and wits as you have. So Frodo like really does wish to destroy it, or at least to see it destroyed. But he really wrestles with this. Why was I chosen? Gandalf's response is, such questions cannot be answered. You may be sure that it was not for any merit that others do not possess, nor for your power or wisdom at any rate. But you have been chosen, and you must therefore use such strength and heart and wits as you have. And at this, right? Because Frodo is just overwhelmed by like, and I think, it's probably most of us, if we've lived long enough, have had these kind of moments, right? Where you're kind of like, why was I put into this rotten situation, right? Why do I have to find myself there? It's a good moment when you do that to be like, probably someone has faced worse situations than you. There definitely are people probably, unless you've faced the ultimate bad situation, which, I don't know. Sorry if you do. That sucks to be you.
I was thinking about, maybe, sorry, just to make light of it. I was like, oh, you mean like being an Orioles fan right now? Like,
hey, we still have a good chance.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, other teams of other fans of other teams probably have it worse than we do.
Imagine being a White Sox fan right now.
Yes. Yeah. You can see perspective.
Yeah.
Changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Gandalf's response to Frodo's like kind of angst about being chosen is just like, I don't know, really. I don't know, but you have been, and you have something you need to you need to accomplish. So something just short of like get it together, man. Right. Gandalf's handling this really well. He's really trying to be like, to kind of bring Frodo into the know about this massive weight burden that's been placed upon him, but like also, be encouraging to him. Right. And not to, like being encouraging to him in the, like, I don't know what lies before you, but I will help you as much as I can. Of course, Frodo's mind is like, well, great, maybe you can help me by taking the ring for me, right? I don't want it.
I mean, that seems reasonable.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
So let's read Gandalf's response to Frodo's offer. Again, do you want to read?
Sure.
Right here.
No, cried Gandalf, springing to his feet. With that power, I should have power too great and terrible, and over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. His eyes flashed, and his face was lit by a fire within. As by a fire within. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. I shall have such need of it. Great perils lie before me.
Yeah. So, Gandalf's greatest fear is that if he does take it, then he becomes like the Dark Lord, right? I don't want to become like the Dark Lord himself. And here we have this idea of pity again, right? I think this is interesting because, you might surmise like Sauron's desire for the ring is like for the power of it, right? And for many, that's going to be their desire for it. But Gandalf, it would be like via the way of pity. And of course, we'll see Galadriel wrestle with, the idea of possessing the ring much later on, and several chapters from now. But Gandalf knows that the ring would win out, right? Even though he might take it from this motivation of pity, like he wants. He has pity for weakness and a desire of strength to do good. Now, how would that play out? I mean, what do you think, Greta? Like, how could a desire, like, how can that be wrong to take the ring when you have a desire to do, when you're, pity, like, in that seems like a pretty good motivating reason to take the ring. So what do you think? Like, why does Gandalf have this response?
Well, I think he recognizes that, I think, even though his intention in taking the ring would be good, that the ring has the power to corrupt that. And, he says, I should have power too great and terrible. So even though, like, his initial intention for the use of the ring is a good thing, right? It's to do good. He knows that that's not how it will stay, that the ring just has this way of corrupting and overtaking even the best of intentions.
Yeah, and it's he might start by like doing things out of like trying to help people out of pity, but it's like at some point do you overstep in your corrective action, right? Like, so you're like, oh, I need to help these people because I pity them, and so you go and maybe you act with unnecessary violence, right, towards the perceived oppressor, right? And you justify it in the mind of like, well, I'm trying to help those who need pity. I mean, I think any of us who kind of like, maybe have an outlook on the world like Gandalf's here, like a desire to help people, right? Desire to do good. We can understand with enough life experience how this could go wrong, right? Like you see, it's like you see somebody getting picked on, right? And you're just like, like it cries out within you, like you want to help this person, right? So what do? Well, maybe instead of like trying to diffuse the situation, you just get so angry at the person who's picking on them that you go and like, just haul off and just clock somebody, right? And, Greta's got some martial arts training, so she's got to be careful about this kind of stuff. But, you're so like, it's not just like you're going to diffuse the situation or you're going to disarm like the person who's doing evil, who's doing the oppressing, but you are going to full on kind of like make them pay so they don't do it again, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you've kind of stepped into that taken that first step towards the corruption of the ring power, maybe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was also thinking too, like, it's that, your what starts out as you doing good can very easily go to your head, right?
Oh yeah.
Which in of itself would influence your motive. So, you can think about, maybe you start out as a philanthropist, right? Giving a bunch of money to, help the poor or whatever. And then you're like, oh, wow, I'm really something special. Like, look at me helping all these poor people and, whatever. And then it becomes more about you and what you have to offer as opposed to what you're actually doing to help people.
Yeah.
Like it becomes kind of a means to your own glory.
Yeah, absolutely. Pride has its way of like working into these sorts of situations. And so this is one of those stark moments where I think Tolkien does a fantastic job of like painting, like really like revealing the power of the ring, right? That even Gandalf is terrified of what this might do to him, and it's a sobering. This is, I think this gets to the heart of the kind of like spiritual underpinnings of the Lord of the Rings, right? Like this, the very spiritual idea that that in the end, like like sort of like the sword may have its place, right? And like restraining evildoers, but it's not the ultimate solution, right? It can't be the ultimate solution, right? There's only ultimately kind of this spiritual battle that has to happen, right? The renunciation of retaliation, right? And like retaliatory motives and that kind of thing. Anyway, I just think this is a beautiful little picture of like Gandalf's wisdom, but also a moment in which he's vulnerable, right? He shows his own vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also it shows that it just makes you think about, okay, so he's okay. Like Frodo keeping the ring doesn't pose the same danger.
Yes.
As it would for Gandalf to take it. And then, obviously you think about the difference between Gandalf and Frodo. Well, Gandalf is a Maya, whereas Frodo is a hobbit, right? So it obviously, there's, again, that comes that spiritual, supernatural element. You're like, well, Gandalf has, like his starting position, if you will, like as a Maya makes the ring all the more dangerous in his hands as opposed to Frodo being a hobbit.
Because he has greater agency already, right?
Exactly.
He has a greater power to do more with it already. He has a greater awareness of its powers.
Right.
And so in this we kind of see, like, we start to understand, like, piece together like why Frodo was chosen, right? You start to discern that.
And you even think about too, and I don't want to really get ahead of ourselves too much, but like, the ring, as we'll see as we continue to go through the book, as we've seen before, the ring doesn't have the kind of hold on Sam even as it does on Frodo, right? And, we've talked too a little bit about the hierarchy, if you will, between Frodo and Sam, right? Like Frodo is still, he's a more well-to-do, maybe a more, like higher class of hobbit than Sam is. So it seems like the simpler the person that's holding it, the less of a hold it has on them.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, Gandalf does offer, he says, like, I can help you, and I will help you, like, but I can't possess it, right? I can't take it. That's too dangerous for you and for me and for all of Middle Earth, ultimately.
Yeah. He says, do not tempt me twice, which I think is interesting.
Right.
It's like he has to repeat it to make his point.
It's interesting to think too, like, is there possibly a danger here where the ring in the hands of a Gandalf, because he is a powerful figure on the level of Sauron, like that the ring would step up its own game, right? If it was possessed by Gandalf, because it's like, okay, now I've got a real, now I'm not in the hands of a Gollum or a, Bilbo or a Frodo anymore. I'm in the hands of a, real player, right?
Yeah. He could really, the ring could really exploit their already existing power.
Right.
Yeah.
anyway, interesting little consideration there. I will help you bear this burden as long as it is yours to bear, but we must do something soon. The enemy is moving. All right. So, Greta, any last minute thoughts before we close this one out?
Yeah, that was a good discussion.
All right. Well, there is no decree from on high to tell us why Frodo was, in fact, chosen. But it is also clear that it was not simply random chance that led to this moment. So is it possible to know why? I think that is one of the major existential questions that underlies the whole story of Lord of the Rings. We sometimes have to fumble and stumble through the paths of life as if we are feeling our way in the dark, knowing only that we are aiming to accomplish that key thing which reality has placed before us. Like Frodo, though we may be flummoxed by our circumstances in any moment, attention to the important matters before us and a spirit of humility can lead us to greater insight, and perhaps to a simple heroism we never knew we had within us. In the next episode, we'll wrap up the Shadow of the Past as Samwise too is chosen, albeit in a much clearer and more direct manner. Stay tuned. All right.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider supporting us in one or all of the following ways. First, join the Fellowship of the Road by visiting patreon.com/Tolkien Road. When you join the Fellowship of the Road, it helps us to keep on evering on and lands you some cool perks along the way. Learn more at patreon.com/Tolkien Road.
Second, if you're watching, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what's on your mind in the comments below.
Finally, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes or the platform of your choice. If you are a 5-star fan of the Tolkien Road, you can really help us out by heading over to iTunes or your preferred source for the show and dropping us a rating and review. When you do that, it helps get the word out about the Tolkien Road, which helps us to keep on evering on.
As always, keep the correspondence coming. We'll do our best to respond to you somehow and at some point. With Do Not Be Hasty, we'll let the mail pile up and then do a big mailbag episode at the end of each chapter. While we can't promise you that your mail will be read on air, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so drop those comments and send those emails.
Finally, don't forget to stop by truemythspress.com for great merch like super styling and comfy Tolkien Road t-shirts, Two Trees camper mugs, and signed copies of John's books, Tolkien's Requiem and Tolkien's Overture. Once again, that's truemythspress.com. Thank you for supporting our work with your purchase.
To close, as always, we'd like to thank our amazing fellowship. We know all of you have as well as we should like, and we've thanked less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Special thanks to the following: John R.,
Caitlin of Tea with Tolkien,
KG,
Arendelle Hope,
Emilio P.,
Jonathan D.,
Richard K.,
Paul D.,
Julia,
Wordy,
Chris B.,
2War91,
Carolyn S.,
Emil K.,
Brian O. II,
Jonathan R.,
Matthew W.,
Daniel D.,
Harrison C.,
Jason C.,
Seb M.,
Wilbo Baggins,
Ms. Anonymous,
Andrew T.,
Red Hawk,
Shannon S.,
Brian O. I.,
Zeke F.,
James L.,
Chris L.,
Aja V.,
Ish of the Hammer,
Teresa C.,
David of Pines with Jack,
and Eric B.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. And finally, thanks to all for watching and or listening. Until next time, the road goes ever on.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.